Caitriona Balfe on Claire's trauma in the Outlander Season 5 finale. The actress and executive producer breaks down the episode's heaviest moments and her hopes for Outlander's next season. Claire Fraser is no stranger to brutality. The first time we ever see our Outlander heroine, played by Caitriona Balfe, on screen, she's stoically tending to a soldier's horrifically mangled leg, her face spattered with arterial blood, and her life became only marginally less grueling after World War II ended. Since tumbling back through time into 18th-century Scotland, Claire has endured a whole litany of traumas, loss, miscarriage, physical and emotional violence at the hands of countless villains, and emerged more resilient than ever. But tonight's Season 5 finale centers on what may be Claire's most horrific ordeal to date, following her kidnapping at the hands of Lionel Brown and his men at the climax of last week's episode. The disorienting opening moments of Never My Love find Claire in an idyllic but surreal 1960s dreamscape, immediately suggesting that this will be no ordinary episode of Outlander. It soon becomes clear that this is her brain's desperate attempt to cope with unspeakable trauma as she is gagged, beaten, and raped by multiple men. Outlander has always been fascinated with the dynamics of sex and power, and by extension with the ways in which sexual assault is used as a weapon. Ever since Jamie Fraser, Sam Heughan, was raped by Blackjack Randall at the end of Season 1, the show has drawn praise for its unusually nuanced portrayal of sexual violence and its lasting psychological impact. But more recently, particularly in the wake of the rape of Brianna Randall Fraser, Sophie Skelton, last season, there has also been criticism for what some consider an over-reliance on rape as a source of conflict and drama, an over-reliance that is baked into Diana Gabaldon's novels, on which the show is based. Though Claire is promptly rescued midway through the season finale, this episode will continue a long and sometimes fraught conversation about the role of sexual violence on Outlander. "It is a really hard line that we have to tread," Balfe told me over the phone last week. "Obviously, we try to stick as faithfully to the books as possible, and rape is something that creeps up quite often in Diana's novels. When you have 8 or 9 books out in the span of 20 years, it probably doesn't feel like there's as much, but when you're compressing all of it down for TV, it becomes quite difficult. We can only try to do it as respectfully and as, I suppose, empoweringly as we can." For both Balfe and the episode's writers Matthew B. Roberts and Tony Graffia, Claire's kidnapping, which is taken from Gabaldon's 6th book, A Breath of Snow and Ashes, rather than Book 5 like most of the season, was a sensitive one to approach. They considered playing the entire incident off-screen, showing only the aftermath, but Balfe balked at this option. "I felt that if we're going to do it at all, we have to make it have a point," she explains, "and have it say something about the experience that can maybe add something positive to the conversation. The scene had to stay grounded in Claire's experience, without showing gratuitous detail or giving too much license to her attackers." This being Outlander, it's perhaps no surprise that the solution was time travel. For Balfe, the sequence fell into place when Roberts suggested the idea of intercutting flash-forwards to an imaginary, impossible 1960s reality, in which Claire, Jamie, and their extended family gather for Thanksgiving dinner in a picturesque and distinctly modern country home. As Claire slips in and out of consciousness during her ordeal, she takes refuge in this dissociative dream sequence where things seem idyllic, yet uneasy. "We went through quite a few drafts, trying to get it to the right place," recalls Balfe, who was an executive producer for the first time on Season 5 and relished her expanded role in the process. "We wanted to make sure it was very clear that this is a dissociative state, and it's a coping mechanism that Claire uses, and that it didn't become, oh, look how cool it is to have everybody in the 60s. It's easy to understand this concern. Fans have long known that Jamie doesn't have the ability to time travel, which makes the opportunity to see him in a 1960s timeline irresistibly tantalizing. In the beginning, when the writers came up with this idea, they did get a little lost in the excitement of that notion, and we definitely had to walk it back a lot. For instance, Balfe says, Claire originally had far more dialogue during the dream sequence, which was stripped back and honed to ensure it tracked with the reality of what was happening to her. I felt it was really important that the only time we hear her speak is to either say no, because this is what she would be saying in real time, or calling out for Jamie. Those are the only two times you hear Claire say anything during this whole disassociate dream state. She never participates in the conversation. Far from the fanservice moment it could have been, the dinner sequence is designed to keep Claire 1 degree removed, so that we always know that the reason we're there is that something really terrible is happening to Claire, and she's constructed this as a safe place to go in her mind. The fragile sense of peace within the sequence finally crumbles with the arrival of two uniformed officers, who tell Claire that her daughter Bree, son-in-law Roger, and their child have been killed in a car accident. It's a jarring moment that blurs Claire's real anxiety about the fate of the couple, who as far as she knows, have just traveled back through the stones into the future, with the demise of her first husband, Frank, in a car crash circa 1966. It's interesting that she does conflate those two ideas of Brianna and Frank, Balfe muses, noting that the heir has an additional significance for Claire. There was that period after Frank died, and before she went back into the past to find Jamie, when Claire was very much her own woman. She was in control of her own life and her own destiny as a modern working woman, and in this moment of powerlessness, that's why she went to that place.